very much. It's only the beginning. Still 1 hour and 55 minutes, you know. Actually, what you've seen right now is what the invitation is all about. This is a private tour each one of you can enjoy when coming to visit Tower of David Museum and to see the new excavations. This is only a small part of it right now, which we're building right now. And what you're looking at is to see where once the palace of King Herod used to be. You need to remember we are talking about a magnificent palace described in the scriptures of Josephus as the second most amazing thing in Jerusalem. And if I may give you a record here, because Jerusalem has been described not only by Josephus, but by others, such as Strabo, the 1st century BC historian from Rome, who was a senator, by the way, and he describes Jerusalem as one of the most magnificent cities he's ever seen, and the most amazing building, according to him, in the world of Roman Empire was no less than the Temple Mount being built by King Herod. So my friends, you've missed. Some 2,000 years ago, Jerusalem was exceptional. But still, you're invited to see, and what you're looking at right now is both Temple Mount and down there on the right forehead of the whole picture lies the restoration of the palace, which is where I'm about to take you right now. These are replicas of what you're looking at right now. Of course, within the sentences, this is the explanation of Josephus in both two descriptions. One in the book, The Antiquity of the Jews, and the second one is The War of the Jews Against the Romans. In both books, my friends, documentation describes the palace as magnificent, no less than magnificent. He's talking about trained doves flying above the pools and huge water pools, bringing water from Bethlehem, by the way, into Jerusalem, because you need to remember that during that time, the Gihon spring, the old water source of Jerusalem, was underneath in the ancient city of David, and this is way lower. In order to bring water to King Herod's palace, one needed to build an aqueduct, and this technology was only available during the Roman times. And therefore, in the Roman times, you see the city of David being less important, and the high parts of what we call Western Jerusalem, overlooking the Temple Mount, this is what becomes more important. This is the reason why King Herod would build his palace overlooking Temple Mount, because he could, because he had water. This is actually the description of the pools from the beautiful restoration one can see today in the Israel Museum. And if you wish to see how it looks in the excavation when visiting, this is actually what you're looking at. These are the original stairs we found when we excavated under Tower of David Museum. These staircases are purely Herodian. Everything upon them, including coins, lanterns, oil lamps, all kinds of organic materials, are dated to the time of King Herod, friends, which we're talking about 1st century BC, and this is a part of the excavation. I need to show you a bit more than that. These are around the moat. What you're looking at right now, this is a part of the moat that is surrounding the citadel, and the staircase that is going down to King Herod's palace. But now, before understanding why do we believe that King Herod's palace is actually the place of the trial, I need to share with you a piece of information regarding historical documentation, friends, which is what we call the Catholic dogma. And now you should ask yourself, wait, is Shachar standing here in an evangelical Jewish Christian thing and talking about Catholic dogma? Excuse me, yes I am. For about 600 years, friends, since 1342, actually 1342 was a great year for the Franciscan order. Franciscan order at that year was nominated by the Pope at that time to be the Custodia di Terra Santa, meaning the guards of the Holy Land. At that time, they started purchasing houses and properties all around what we know today to be Old City of Jerusalem. You need to remember, at that time, there's no wall yet around Jerusalem as you know it today, because Turkish Ottomans have yet never come to Jerusalem, so they haven't built the wall. What is being formulated at the time, the formation of what we know today as the Muslim Quarter, friends, is being formed in the 14th century under Mamluk rule. Due to historical reasons, due to theological reasons, Muslim reasons, they are building what today is the Muslim Quarter. Now, why is this so important for us? Because at the time, pilgrims Christian pilgrims who wanted to walk from the Mount of Olives all the way to Golgotha needed to cross that hostile area. So purchases from the Pope were made within Jerusalem by his long arm, which are the Franciscans. And every piece of land purchased at the time is going to become, in a few years from that time, sacred, holy. This is the time of the formation of the 14 stations of the Holy Via Dolorosa, meaning the way of the cross. But this is a Catholic idea, because if you're looking at Byzantine origins, documentary from Byzantine times, it's actually the wrong way. People didn't walk the right way, because the whole Via Dolorosa, which we know today, is a Catholic dogma formatted due to purchasing of real estate, properties, simply, in order to make a safe passage from Mount of Olives towards Golgotha. Put that in mind, as I'm about to tell you the new understanding, actually showing you what archaeology and documentation from the Holy Scriptures has to say about the place of the trial. Because at that time, place of the trial started in station number 1, which is what? The Antonia Fortress. But let me ask you this, is the Antonia Fortress the right place for the trial? Due to the Scriptures, as Pontius Pilate is being described, judging Jesus Christ, where he resides. If you are the Roman procurator above King Herod, where would you reside when you visit Jerusalem for the Passover? This is Passover times. He is coming from Caesarea. So is King Herod. King Herod doesn't reside in Jerusalem the whole time. He resides most of the time in Caesarea. They're coming to over-inspect the whole Easter time, Pesach, Passover, to make sure that things are calmed. And the Roman procurator would not be sleeping, my friends, with the simple soldiers in the tent in the Antonia Fortress. If the Roman procurator is to visit Jerusalem, he should be getting the presidential suite in King David Hotel. He should be getting the best possible, which is where? Thank you, King Herod's palace. The presidential suite should be within King Herod's palace, not with the Antonia Fortress. Now let's look at the Scriptures and see what do they have to tell us regarding the place of the trial. You're looking at John 19. We're about to search Mark 15 and Luke 23 as well, but in a minute. John 19, please. Read that. When Pilate heard this, he was even more afraid, and he went back inside the palace, which is described in the original language as the Praetorium. Praetorium, which is extremely important. I don't have enough time. My time is shrinking, so I'm not going to go into linguistics, my friend, but do remember, please. It's coming in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. Jesus, excuse me, didn't speak English. Okay? Excuse my language, as we say. So this is John 19. Let's go for Luke 23, if I may ask you to, and again, read what we've highlighted for you and see the original Holy Scriptures. What do they have to tell us about the trial itself? And we're looking at this. He sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at the time. Spontaneous question. Where would King Herod be in Jerusalem when in Jerusalem? Youth hostel? Where? A tent? He should be in his palace. And therefore we are looking at the palace as the most right place for this whole scene to take place. Another, if I may. You're looking at Mark 15. And again, the soldiers led Jesus away into the palace. That is the Praetorium. When you read that, aside from the Catholic dogma, which I have explained the reasoning of why was it formed some 600 years ago to actually protect Jerusalem for the future pilgrimage of Christians. But once you're looking at that, and you're looking at the new excavations, which we have just shared with you, we need to understand something which is interesting. This is the most logical place for the trial to take place. But wait, there's one more thing. Another historical documentation that I want to share with you regarding a trial in front of the palace. Look at what you're looking at right now. You're looking at a chapter describing a judgment taking place, a trial taking place by Florus, one of the former Roman procurators of Rome. And at that night, it says, Florus, which is Gaius Florus, the Roman procurator, from 64 to 66, slept in the palace. Josephus is giving us a totally different chapter describing something interesting that did happen at the same spot. The next morning, a platform was established in front of the palace, and he sat on it for the trial. Meaning, trialing in front of the royal palace is something that we do have a documentation of. Interesting. So what are we actually looking at, friends? We are looking at an excavation that has unearthed for us the ancient palace of King Herod. We are looking at a documentation that reveals the idea that the trial of Jesus actually took place there in the palace and not where we are so many years regulated going to see the Via Dolorosa from the Antonia Fortress, which is next to El Omaria. It's a Muslim school next to Temple Mount. You can actually visit that site today, and this is what you'd look when you stand there right now, because yet we have not developed the site for, I would say, mass tourism. This is today a unique experience you can experience right now with our best guides coming to visit Tower of David Museum, but this is just a glimpse, should I say, from the future development which we intend to invest in the next 2 years when this is going to be ready. And just before we conclude our short lecture, let me give you another idea of understanding from David to Jesus, because this is an idea that I had the pleasure of developing when I was in charge of the city of David. I had the pleasure of working a long time with the biblical city of David. And the name David here is extremely important. Please do remember 2 Samuel 5, when David is being mocked by the Jebusite king. If you remember, when he's about to conquer Jerusalem, coming from Bethlehem and Hebron, he's sieging with his battalion Jerusalem, and the young King David, future King David, is being mocked by the Jebusite king, friends, telling him, "Thou shalt not come here until you remove the blind and the lame." What I want to suggest, just before I'm, concluding my lecture, is please, friends, do read the Bible as God meant. Start with Genesis and go all the way to Revelations. Okay? Meaning the Old Testament, my friends, which I'm about to tell you a short anecdote about, is extremely important for you to understand why is David, the great-grandfather of Jesus, so important for the understanding of what Jesus does in Jerusalem. So again, he's being mocked by the Jebusite king, and this is Tower of David. Remember? The Tower of David, allegedly the Jebusite fortress from back then. If you understand that, my friends, you need to understand one more thing. David had to struggle his way into Jerusalem by force. He had to strike Jerusalem. The Jebusites were actually taken by him. Jesus, when he comes to Jerusalem, performs only 2 miracles. I don't know if you remember that. 2 miracles only. One of them, he heals a blind man in the pool of Siloam. The second, he's healing a lame, a disabled person in the pool of Bethesda. John 5 and John 9. Did you ever think why blind and lame? Only 2 miracles in Jerusalem, friends? Go back to David. "Thou shalt not come here until you remove the blind and the lame." As I have to conclude, my friends, I would welcome you to see one more amazing thing when visiting the Tower of David. We are celebrating a new amazing night spectacular show for nighttime, which will be dedicated to King David. This is what you are about to see when you come to Jerusalem from April 1st. At nighttime, Jerusalem is going to glow with King David. I thank you very much for listening, and may we see you in Jerusalem next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shachar.